The final season of Stranger Things comes out at the end of this year, and the biggest topic on everyone's lips is who will die. It's quite likely that one of the long-standing characters will die. The show has come under increasing criticism that the creators have not been willing to kill off any of their main characters. And ever since the teasers came out this year, everyone's been putting out their own speculation video as to who will die this season. Today, I will join the trend and talk about who I think my tier list of who I think will die in season 5, but I'm also going to first push back against the idea that someone has to die for this show to be a good show. First, let me introduce myself. I am Ronald, a lawyer talking off the record about entertainment I really enjoy. I hope to bring analysis and heart to the conversation. I think there will be a major death in Stranger Things 5, but first I want to sound off and speak my mind. I don't agree that it's necessary for Stranger Things to kill off a main character for it to be a great show. And if you want to skip ahead to my tier list of who will die, go to the timestamp on the screen. And FYI, as soon as I started recording, Megan jumped into my lap. She always gets jealous whenever I talk to some unknown other person. First, there's a really great analysis video out there called The Frustrating Decline of Stranger Things, which comes up with a lot of valid points that I agree with. I agree with the creator about season 1 being the best season of the show, and that there's been a number of problems in the writing since. But I don't agree with one of their points, echoed by many, that Stranger Things needs to kill off a main character. Think about the many great stories we watch and watch again that we've seen since children that do not involve a major death. Whether they be stirring, unforgettable tales of coming of age, or stories that show heroism in the face of overwhelming odds. There's a time and place for heroic stories with happy endings. Stories can teach us more about the human condition or inspire us to be better people. And what storytelling can do for human beings shouldn't be reduced to racking up a death count for its own sake. There's a danger of reducing stories to that in order to cover up faults in their writing, tease out the possibility of death to get everyone to tune in and speculate as to who will die. Probably the most prominent critics of Stranger Things not killing off main characters are the cast members themselves. Millie Bobby Brown, who portrays Elle, called the Duffer Brothers sensitive Sallies for not killing off more characters and said, "We need to be Game of Thrones. We need to have the mindset of Game of Thrones." The Duffer Brothers, the main creators, responded directly to her statement. They defended themselves against accusations of being too sensitive, saying that upping the show's body count, particularly when it comes to killing a main character, would change its fundamental nature. Remember, this show draws from a number of sources, including 1980s popcorn flicks where kids are the heroes and save the day, and have happy endings. Matt Duffer said, "Believe us, we've explored all of it, all options in the writing room." And he added that killing a major character like Mike Wheeler would be, quote, depressing, unquote. They go on about how there needs to be a story reason for a death. Matt says, when Barb dies, it's 2 seasons of grappling with that. So imagine, Mike dying, and it's like, is that something that we're interested in exploring or not interested in exploring? Every death on the show, he said, serves both a thematic and a narrative purpose to move the story forward. One criticism of season 4 is that Eddie died, a beloved character introduced in the same season to be killed off that same season. And this show has had a pattern of doing that, introducing a beloved character who becomes that season's death because the show is not willing to kill off one of the core characters. I can see that argument, but, well, think about it. Would it have made sense for the show to have killed off Max when she's a hero to people battling depression and suicidal thoughts in our real lives? Now, all this isn't to say that there isn't an issue with Stranger Things. I just think that saying that they need to kill off main characters is a reductive way to put it. What I actually take issue with, what Ronald off the record takes an issue with, is that Stranger Things has cried wolf too many times. Think of those stories with happy endings that I alluded to earlier, including Lord of the Rings. Whatever they did, they maintained a sense of stakes throughout. Some of these stories even had fake-out deaths, and they still maintained the sense of danger for their main characters. And oh, did Lord of the Rings have its sense of stakes. But they were able to do this because they didn't repeatedly cry wolf. They didn't make you fear for the fate of a certain character and say, just kidding. In Stranger Things, Elle died at the end of season 1, but actually she didn't. Also, Hopper died at the end of season 3, but actually he didn't. And we're not just talking about apparent on-screen deaths. We're talking about every moment in this show where it tries to ramp it up the tension and make you think, oh, they are in danger. So when Joyce and Murray are flying to the Russian prison and their plane is crashing, it's supposed to be this edge-of-your-seat action scene, but I assume nearly everybody was like me, thinking in the back of our heads, they're protected by plot armor. And then when Hopper and the other Russian prisoners are about to fight the Demogorgon, and Hopper's lighter doesn't work, he can't light the torch, I was rolling my eyes because are you telling me that he went through hell in order to get this lighter and it's just gonna randomly not work and this main character is gonna die for that reason? Especially since we had a fake out of his death under much more clearly dire circumstances at the end of season 3. When the show is constantly crescendoing with big exclamation points, it kind of makes you numb to those times when you're supposed to feel something. And for me, personally, it culminated at the end of season 4. I felt Eddie's death, I really did. It felt like a real end to his character. But I didn't feel Max's death scene because I didn't think she was dying. And it had nothing to do with their performances. It had everything to do with how they were framed. Eddie's speech to Dustin showed that he was at the end of his own personal arc. He was looked down on by Hawkins as a pariah, and here he is proving to his good friend Dustin and to himself that he actually is a hero. For Max, it was simultaneously senseless and tragic. She realizes she wants to live after all and is now losing her life. And it was also drawn out. In the back of my mind, I knew that Eddie had been introduced this season in order for him to be the death this season. And again, the show had faked main character deaths before and also teased Max's death in front of us earlier in the season. So in sum, I don't think the show needs to kill off a main character for it to be a great story. On the other hand, I think they will kill off at least one character, at least a long-standing character this season, in order to pay the debt that they have accrued of these fake-out deaths, dulling people's sense of consequences and stakes that viewers now have. Now, perhaps that's not necessary. The fact that this is the last season alone might be enough to get everyone thinking someone will die, which is already happening. Here's Matt Duffer saying, moving into the show's 5th and final season, quote, more of that's on the table, the idea that someone will die. I do think that if there isn't a death of a long-standing, loved character, that fact will nag the Duffer brothers as they go forward in their careers. So yeah, I do think that at least one character will die. Now on to the tier list. And if anyone doubted that I'm a lawyer, the fact that my tiers are all qualified statements is a dead giveaway. I'm grouping them from probably save to maybe to in danger to RIP question mark. Now my methodology is like what Matt Duffer said in that article. What makes sense from a writing standpoint? What death would serve the story? I don't think you can make these guesses based off of shots from teaser trailers, which are isolated and have no context. This is probably a season where the show makes you think that every character is about to die at some point anyway. So a writer's got to be thinking, okay, what characters are well loved? What will it do for your story? Does it give that character a fitting end to their arc? How does it impact other characters? Does it drive them to action? Now, I'm a fan of the Joss Whedon School of Pain, who I think made mainstream the practice of killing off long-standing beloved characters. Whatever you think of him, he had deaths that were often genuinely shocking and had a definite purpose in the broader story. I will go through these characters in order from those the general audience is talking the least about them dying to those that they're talking most about dying. My first characters are 3 of the core 4, Dustin, Lucas, and Mike. I think they're probably safe. I'll get to Will later, of course, because many people speculate that he'll die this season. Matt Duffer said in that article that they likely will not kill Mike. Again, the Duffers take inspiration from 1980s coming-of-age flicks where kids save the day and have a happy ending. And that's it. For these 3, that's my argument. Now, I acknowledge that there's a leak out there of certain characters appearing in an epilogue scene. But I'm not buying it because there is a trend among especially popular shows, and Stranger Things, of course, is very popular, of shooting fake scenes to throw off fans and give out fake spoilers. This 2018 article from Looper and their video talk about this practice. The other reason I'm not buying it is that I hate spoilers. I am a spoiler phobe. Don't tell me he's gonna live. I want to suffer. Okay, the next character is Max Mayfield. Probably safe. She's already had 2 near-death experiences in this show, and again, the writers want to show people who are dealing with real-life depression and thoughts of suicide a character who gets to live the life that she chose to live. That's a completely valid reason to not kill her off. Next is Erica Sinclair. Probably safe. There's a general distaste, understandable, of not killing young children in fiction, particularly the heroic children's stories that Stranger Things draws inspiration from. Plus, aside from one tender moment with Lucas at the end of season 4, we haven't seen much of her connecting with other characters. It wouldn't have that much emotional impact on the other characters in the show. It would, of course, impact Lucas, but he's already going through the process of dealing with losing Max this season. Not included in this tier maker, but I will put her on the screen, is Holly Wheeler. I'm listing her as probably safe. Mike and Nancy's little sister, who has been recast with a different actress, someone who has more experience, probably because she is going to have a more important role in the story. It's quite likely that she will be abducted by Vecna or the Mind Flayer, and that this will drive forward the plot. But again, there's the issue of killing off children in shows like this, and if she's abducted, the fact that a child is missing is enough to drive people to action, as we saw in season 1. No need to increase the stakes even further. If we want to have an emotional impact on Mike Wheeler, well, there are other options in his family, as we'll see. Robin Buckley, probably safe. There's another Stranger Things character's chance of dying video where she makes a good point about Robin, that Robin's in this happy middle space where she's not so insignificant that she's expendable, and she's also not central enough to the other characters in the show where her death would have a sufficient emotional impact on them. Additionally, killing off Robin would make the show prone to the accusation that they are burying their gays, a troublesome trend in TV shows of treating gay and queer characters as less important and expendable, which I'm guessing will also protect her likely girlfriend Vicky this season. That's another part of the bury your gays trope of never having LGBT characters having romantic happy endings. Next is Nancy Wheeler, and she's the first person I'm gonna put in a higher tier and list her as a maybe. Most people assume that she's gonna live when talking about Jancy versus Stancy, the love triangle involving Jonathan and Steve. Clearly, if one of them is endgame, then Nancy is alive. But I think there's a possibility she could die this season. One, it would resolve the love triangle. I know that sounds kind of cold, and I know it's also not the best way to resolve a love triangle writing-wise, but it's a fact. But it would also give some closure to Nancy's story. She did get some justice for her best friend Barbara's death in season 2. However, that's still something that's probably haunting her. In reality, she will always feel guilty for Barbara's death, and in season 4, Vecna showed Barbara to Nancy. Being able to save some people's lives, particularly her loved ones and her family, could be a fitting ending for her. Also, there's this behind-the-scenes shot, and I'll put it on the screen, of it looks like Mike is being comforted by Hopper. And they're out on a public street, and Hopper is out in the open. Everyone thought he died in season 3, so this makes me think it's late in season 5. So maybe this is Mike grieving Nancy at the end. Some people thought it was him grieving Elle, but it doesn't make sense to me that Hopper would be comforting Mike about the death of his own daughter. But come on. Next are several of the older adults in the show, since Nancy's generation are adults now, too. Murray Bauman, I put him at maybe. He's arguably an expendable character, but it also means that his death would feel relatively cheap and would not have much emotional impact on the other characters. However, he is the perfect person to kill off if you want to lull the audience into thinking that's the death of season 5, and then set people up to be surprised by a more important character's death. I've seen it happen in TV fiction, and people who follow Joss Whedon's work know what I'm talking about. Next is Karen Wheeler, Mike and Nancy's mom, and I'm going to put her in the highest category, R.I.P. In season 4, Vecna showed Nancy a vision of her family, probably seeing them dead.
He showed me my mom, Holly, Mike. We were all...
The teasers we've gotten also show Karen protecting Holly. Karen's death would have an emotional impact. We've had a number of touching scenes between her, Mike, and Nancy. She has the convenience of not being a main character. It would still have an emotional impact on the audience. It would definitely drive Nancy and Mike to action, and it would raise the stakes for this season. Now, Ted Wheeler is not in this tier maker, but I'm going to add him as another maybe. He's just been presented as kind of comic relief as a detached dad, so it would be another death that would feel cheap and not have much impact on characters or the audience. Sheriff Hopper, I think this will surprise people. I don't see people listing him high, but I'm going to put him as in danger. Most people don't think he'll die because we already had a fake-out death with him, and a whole season dedicated to rescuing him. But in season 4, we're reminded that Hopper is dealing with guilt and grief for his daughter's death and everything bad that happens to people he loves. He thought that he himself is the curse. And also there's this casting call that went out for someone to portray Hopper's daughter, Sarah. So we're probably getting another flashback involving Hopper's daughter. Perhaps Elle, his new adoptive daughter, is in danger and is about to die. and Hopper has to do something, possibly sacrifice himself, in order to save Elle's life. It would give closure to Hopper's arc. Also, while I like Jopper, the Joyce-Hopper relationship, I don't think that they're soulmates. I don't know if they work well outside the crazy situations they're put in. I'm basically still on Team Bob Newby superhero. Okay, Joyce Byers. I put her as in danger also. Oh, Joyce, the sympathetic, compelling, fierce, loving mother from the first 2 seasons who became a caricature of herself in seasons 3 and 4. I hope season 5 moves her away from being a conspiracy theorist to being a mama bear protecting her cubs again. We know that Will is certainly in danger from Vecna this season, and we know that Joyce will do anything for her children, including making the ultimate sacrifice. No hesitation. It would certainly be one of the more emotionally impactful deaths in the show, and it would drive Jonathan and Will to act. Some people have said that Joyce is not going to die because it would mean more trauma for Will, and he's had enough trauma already, clearly. But we are going to see Will suffer more this season, as much as many of us would not want that to happen. And this is a coming-of-age story. And what often happens in coming-of-age stories is losing the parent, guardian, or mentor figure that you relied on and having to forge ahead on your own. Before I move on, I'm going to point out that there's an obvious pattern here. The older the character is, the more likely they're going to die. Again, this is due to the stories that this show draws inspiration from. It's the kids in these stories who are the protagonists. Next is a character people fear for, Jonathan Byers, and I'm going to put him as a maybe. People are speculating that the blood on Nancy's hand in the latest teaser is Jonathan's blood. Also, this show hasn't given much purpose to Jonathan since looking for his brother in season 1. He's either been tagging along with Nancy on a mission where she's the driving force, or he's been high. One quick way to give him purpose in this show, relatively cheaply, is for him to die for the greater good. And also, it would resolve the love triangle. But that's kind of a crude way to do both those things. And about the love triangle, it's more meaningful to resolve it based on where their characters are at emotionally and what they want, instead of some external circumstance forcing the decision and Nancy going with whoever's left. By the way, I'm Team Jancy. I think she's going to end up with Jonathan. The show establishes that she does not want to settle down and have kids and is strong-willed and wants to have her own career. And Steve's dream involves 6 kids, and it's kind of a fantasy, and I don't think that's Nancy. So the fact that there's a love triangle that you want to resolve on its own terms gives Jonathan some protection. Now, his death would be horrifying and impactful on Joyce and Will and drive them to act. However, I think just Jonathan being in danger is enough to drive Joyce to action. We all know that. But I do think that if Will gets a villain arc, and look at my video where I go into that more, that killing Jonathan, or at least harming him, would give Will the torment of being guilty over it. And yes, I am evil. Next is Steve Harrington. Oh, a lot of people are afraid for Steve. I'm going to list him as maybe. A lot of people talk about him dying, one, because he may be the most popular character in Stranger Things. And there are many people like me who think Jancy will be endgame, and killing him off would resolve that issue. But again, I think that's a crude way to resolve the romantic triangle. But as much as I love him, and despite the fact that he's so popular, I don't think Steve dying would have enough emotional impact on the rest of the characters. Now, the one exception, however, is Dustin, who just went through the trauma of losing his older brother figure, Eddie. And I'm guessing this clip from the teaser is Dustin thinking that he lost Steve, but realizing Steve's still alive and being relieved. But it would be kind of cruel for Dustin to go through this again, and also repetitive. Dustin's already going through the emotional arc of dealing with Eddie dying. So we don't need to pile on to that to explore where Dustin's going to go this season. All right, now the big ones, Will and Elle. Now Will, he is the second most predicted character to die in the show, and for good reason. He's being built up as the main character. There are plausible theories out there that he has powers. Perhaps he's key to defeating Vecna. Perhaps there's some connection between him and Vecna like there was between Harry Potter and Voldemort. Either way, he's going to be central to the story and possibly key to saving Hawkins. Plus, Will has demonstrated that he's willing to sacrifice himself for others. Still, I'm putting Will at probably safe. I think he's safe because of how the show has gone out of its way to make the audience sympathize for Will season after season. He's been kidnapped, possessed, gone through physical torment, and gone through emotional hell. One of those things, at least, in every season. He's gone through a lot of unfair suffering, and for a lot of people, including me, his moments are often the most grueling to witness. And on top of that, the show has made Will selfless despite it all. In season 1, when he recovers in the hospital, his first act is to ask Jonathan if his hand is okay. As a little kid, he gives a stranger a Tonka truck.
You saw that little girl, and she was in the sandbox, and she was crying. You gave her your Tonka truck. You said she should have it because she's sad. She's sad, Mommy.
In season 2, he tells people to close the gate to save their lives, and he knows that's likely going to kill him because he's connected to the hive mind. And in the last season, despite being in love with Mike, he does what he can to make Mike and Elle work out. In countless stories, you generally give the main character who's been made to suffer, and yet despite it all, remains optimistic and kind-hearted to others despite thinking they're never going to get any better, a happy ending. Now, some people think that the show might subvert expectations and make this very sympathetic character die in order to surprise people and twist the knife. But I think they don't understand who the Duffers are and what kind of story they want to tell. This is a show that sides with the outcasts and the marginalized, who wants those who in real life often don't have happy endings to find a way to have a happy ending. It's repeatedly been said by the creators and the cast.
We 1983 Midwesterners will repel bullies. We will shelter freaks and outcasts, those who have no homes. And when we are at a loss amidst the hypocrisy and the casual violence of certain individuals and institutions, we will, as per Chief Jim Hopper, punch some people in the face when they seek to destroy the meek and the disenfranchised and the marginalized. And we will do it all with soul, with heart, and with joy. We thank you for this responsibility. Thank you.
And I don't think the Duffers want to tell queer people who have horrors in their real lives that they don't get to have a happy ending in this fictional story either. And of course, there's a danger of perpetuating the bury your gays trope. There are people who are theorizing that Will make a love confession to Mike right before sacrificing himself. And that's utterly tone deaf. Do we think that the Duffer brothers, who are socially progressive, will write an ending for Will that means that his love for Mike is simply a device to repair a heterosexual relationship before he kicks the bucket? Do they want to send the message that gay and queer people are side characters, less important, and are there to build straight characters' happiness before they croak, or at least are destined to be alone and unloved? Also, Will dying would be kind of too obvious. People are responding to death flags about Will dying from the recent teasers. And there certainly will be more death flags for Will in season 5. But they're forgetting that this is how you set up a twist. Have we forgotten that this show subverts common tropes, such as the incompetent small-town sheriff, the popular guy who's a jerk, the guy who gets the girl, and the gay person who has an unrequited attraction to a straight friend? You thought I wasn't getting Byler in here, did you? Will's death would be so obvious that I predict that we're going to have a fake-out death for Will this season. People are expecting it, and it would have a lot of emotional impact, and he'll survive. Last but not least, okay, Vecna's RIP. He's going to die. Okay, but Elle, she's the person most people are predicting will die. She has powers, and she is almost certainly going to be key to defeating Vecna. And she and Vecna are the only ones who have the power to open gates between the dimensions, and Elle is the only one we know of who can close gates. Victory has to involve closing those damn gates in Hawkins. Also, it was the Duffer Brothers' initial plan to have Elle die at the end of season 1. I'll put an article on the screen. And also we had that casting call for Hopper's daughter, which is probably Hopper processing the prospect of Elle dying in his head. Also, there's this interview with Millie Bobby Brown where she was able to go into the writer's room, and this is her reaction to seeing the fate of her character.
Well, I haven't read the end. I know what happens to my character because I kind of forced myself into the writer's room.
So you broke in and found out.
Yes, basically, I messaged the directors and thought, can I come over and have a meeting with you? And then I came over and then there was a whiteboard.
So you've written your own ending.
No, I just saw my ending and thought, oh, and then I walked away very slowly. And
Sounds kind of ominous to me. However, all the speculation that Elle will die, again, like for Will, could be set up for a twist. A lot of people are predicting that Elle will sacrifice herself to save the town, but the thing is, she already had a self-sacrificing hero arc in season 1, and she's had a different arc since, of trying to be a normal girl, of finding the family and friends that she was denied in the lab. So I think Elle is a maybe. However, if I were to bet on these things, and I'm not a betting man, I think she's going to live. I think her actual ending is that after the world is saved, Elle will lose her powers, and she permanently gets off the government's radar. And unlike at the start of season 4, her feeling that she doesn't belong anywhere will have resolved. She gets to belong with her found family and friends in Hawkins. It would be bittersweet, but it would free her from the responsibility she's had to bear her whole life, to try to please Dr. Brenner, to try to help others, to try to save the world. And she finally gets to live for herself. She would begin a journey of living a normal life and discover herself, what she likes, what her interests are, probably with Max, the friend who first got her on that road in the first place. What we saw in season 3 was perhaps a preview of them living a lifelong friendship together. Their stories would be in sync. Max would be living the life she chose to live, and Elle would be discovering the life she was denied. It would be a fitting and happy ending for both. So that's my tier list. As you can see, I think the youngest generation survives all of them. The teens, quote unquote, in the show who are now young adults are generally safe, and the older generation is in danger. And their deaths will be what drive the main younger characters forward. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe to my channel for more commentary from me on television and other entertainment I love, though right now I'm mostly a Stranger Things channel, admittedly. You may be interested in my mega video about Byler, the romantic possibility between Mike and Will, which I think will happen in the last season, or my other video where I think Will gains powers in season 5, links at the end. And I will be posting my reactions to each episode of the last season of Stranger Things, so if that interests you, definitely subscribe and follow along. So that's it. I have been Ronald, keeping it real and off the record.